going to be totally eviscerated, down to zero.
Is the U.S. going to lower tariffs on Canadian autos or lumber?
We're doing certain things. Got to give something.
Here's the scoreboard nobody's showing you. On one side, everything Trump demanded. On the other, Canada's column. Let's fill it in.
Let's now bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Capello. Negotiations. Like, if we are doing these things that Trump says, and take it with a grain of salt because it's Donald Trump, but if we are doing these things like putting booze back on the shelf and taking away our counter tariffs on autos and making changes to dairy quotas, then what are we getting in return?
Start with what Trump wanted. He got the list.
The imposition of the Section 338 tariffs would be delayed by 3 days. And in the initial proclamation that said, here's why I'm imposing these tariffs, he identified 3 things. Dairy quotas, so, basically, do American dairy products end up here in Canada? And they do, but the ceiling by which they're judged, the Americans had a problem with that. And then there's also counter tariffs that we have placed on U.S. autos and some U.S. auto parts, of course, again, in response to tariffs that they initially imposed. And then this booze ban, which is the biggest irritant, at least on the face of it, for Americans, which many premiers put in place as a consequence, again, as a response, a consequence of the tariffs initially imposed by the United States. So according to what Trump wrote in that proclamation late last night about 10:20 Eastern, all of that stuff is being taken away.
3 demands, 3 check marks. But the list didn't stop there.
And I ask what more, Renee, because of what the USTR's office put out, Jamieson Greer's office put out just after the president wrote his proclamation, and they alluded to much broader areas, something, for example, that they termed digital alignment. So that makes me wonder, are we all of a sudden going to change some of our laws so that Meta starts allowing news on Facebook, or are we going to, give up other things that we have put in place to sort of rein in some of the big tech giants in the view of government, at least? Then he talked about more access for the United States to Canadian markets. And I ask what more, Renee, because of what the USTR's office put out, Jamieson Greer's office put out just after the president wrote his proclamation, and they alluded to much broader areas, something, for example, that they termed digital alignment. So that makes me wonder, are we all of a sudden going to change some of our laws so that Meta starts allowing news on Facebook, or are we going to, give up other things that we have put in place to sort of rein in some of the big tech giants in the view of government, at least? Then he talked about more access for the United States to Canadian markets. Well, in what way and under what auspice? And then finally, Keystone, right? That comes straight from the president and his posts on social media in which he claimed.
Now, details are still being finalized. So what will it take to get it across the finish line? Someone with some insight into how the U.S. administration works is Kellyanne Shaw. She's a former senior White House trade advisor and former deputy assistant to President Trump for international economic affairs. Thanks for joining.
So that's Trump's column, full. Now Canada's. And here it gets murky. Here's the honest part. Yes, Canada gets something. Steel and aluminum tariffs drop from 50% to 25%. Autos from 25 to 15. That's real relief for real workers. But read the fine print.
Sometimes as trade negotiators, we think the trade stuff is in one lane and the national security stuff or energy stuff is in another. The president thinks about all of this holistically. And so when he's looking at his concerns with Canada, I don't think he limits it to the specific 3 issues that are at issue under those 338 tariffs. He really wants Canada to address a whole range of things, from immigration to fentanyl to defense to economic security to China. And so all of that is fair game, and anytime.
And even at 15%, this stings. U.S. auto tariffs have already caused plant closures and lost jobs in Ontario. Insiders warned Ottawa that a 15% tariff could still shut plants after current models finish. Then there's the sector nobody's talking about.
Is very important. If, in fact, we retain the quote-unquote best deal among a whole bunch of deals where tariffs exist, what does that mean for those sectoral tariffs? Is it more substantial than 25%? Is it still 25%? Is it, compared to other jurisdictions, much better or somewhere along the same? I think those are the metrics by which this deal will be judged by Canadians. And
steel gets a cut. Autos get a cut. Softwood lumber, nothing. British Columbia is watching its biggest export left off the table. And the biggest fight of all? 2 sides telling 2 different stories.
Hopes Canada didn't concede.
The bans of alcohol in the provinces
is an important card, a trump card that we have.
Although one Cape Breton whiskey distiller says seeing shelf space go back to U.S. products isn't as bad.
Notre ligne dure sur la protection de la gestion de l'offre, et je suis très confiant. Just on the question of supply management, I am very confident in these discussions, and as we finalize the final text, as Ambassador Greer said, the Prime Minister was very clear. We needed to protect supply management. We needed to ensure that.
So I spent 10 years negotiating, including with the Canadians, and supply management, I understand, is a very sensitive topic domestically. That said, the president really cares about this. And when he suspended those tariffs, in the proclamation suspending them, he said the Canadians have committed to address dairy. And so I don't know exactly what that will look like. We're all waiting to see the final details, but Canada's going to have to do something or there's not going to be a deal.
Lisa Raitt is standing by, a member of the Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations and, of course, former deputy leader of the Conservative Party of Canada.
So where does that leave Canadians? A Ledger poll this week found about 60% want negotiators to hold a hard line and give no more concessions. You're not alone in doing the math.